The rust-eaten Aston Martin sat behind the junkyard fence like a corpse nobody wanted to bury, and Daniel Reyes had exactly $4,200 to his name when he decided to buy it anyway. Nobody in that small Ohio town knew that 14 days later, a man worth $11 billion would step out of a helicopter, walk straight toward that same car, and offer to buy it for $10 million. Nobody knew, least of all Daniel, that the biggest risk of his life was about to save it. If this story of an underdog father chasing an impossible second chance moves something in you before it even begins, hit like, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, share it with someone who still believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be seen by more than just algorithms. Daniel was 34 years old, and for the last 3 years he had been both mother and father to his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, ever since his wife passed away from complications during a routine surgery that was supposed to be simple. He worked as a mechanic at a small independent garage on the edge of town, the kind of place with one bay, a coffee machine that only made bitter coffee, and a boss who paid him just enough to keep the lights on and not a cent more. Every morning he dropped Lily off at school with a lunch he packed at 5 a.m., and every evening he picked her up with grease still under his fingernails, promising her that someday things would be different, someday he would give her the kind of life her mother had dreamed of for her. The junkyard belonged to old man Pruitt, a widower who had spent 40 years collecting cars nobody else wanted, half believing that broken things deserved a second chance just as much as anything else. Daniel had gone there looking for a transmission part for a customer's truck, and that was when he saw it, tucked behind a mountain of scrapped pickups, its silver paint dulled to the color of an overcast sky, one headlight shattered, tires flat and cracked with age. An Aston Martin DB7, a car that once belonged to a world most people in that town would never touch. Pruitt told him it had been towed in after an estate sale nobody bothered to follow up on, sitting there for 6 years collecting dust and rumors that the engine was seized solid, that it was, in every practical sense, dead. Daniel should have walked away. He had bills piling up on the kitchen counter, a daughter who needed new shoes for the coming winter, and absolutely no business spending money on a broken luxury car instead of fixing the leak in the roof. But something about the car stopped him in his tracks the way certain things do when a person is standing at the edge of their own quiet desperation, looking for any sign that life still owes them something beautiful. He asked Pruitt the price, expecting a number that would end the conversation immediately. Pruitt, who had grown fond of Daniel over the years watching him bring Lily along on Saturdays, quoted him $3,800, take it or leave it, as is, no guarantees. Daniel handed over almost every dollar he had saved, feeling both reckless and strangely certain, the way people feel right before they do something that changes everything. Getting the car home was its own small disaster, requiring a borrowed flatbed trailer and 2 exhausted hours of straining, cursing, and sweating in the cold. When Lily saw it roll into their cracked driveway, she didn't see a wreck. She saw a spaceship, she said, something that had crash-landed just for them, and she spent that whole evening running her small hands along the dented door panels asking her father if it could fly. Daniel laughed for what felt like the first time in months and told her that with enough love and enough elbow grease, almost anything could learn to fly again. That night, after she fell asleep, he sat alone in his garage under a bare bulb, staring at the car, wondering if he had just made the worst financial decision of his life or the first real leap of faith he had taken since his wife died. The next 14 days became a blur of exhaustion layered over hope. Daniel worked his regular shifts at the garage from 7 to 5, came home to make dinner and help Lily with her homework, tucked her into bed by 8, and then disappeared into the driveway with a single work light and a coffee thermos to fight with a car that seemed determined to stay dead. He drained fuel that had turned to sludge, replaced corroded lines, rebuilt a carburetor with parts he could barely afford, and spent one entire weekend simply trying to free pistons that had rusted into place. His hands cracked and bled in the cold. His neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Okafor, would occasionally bring him hot tea and remind him gently that some things break in ways that cannot be fixed, and Daniel would nod, thank her, and keep working anyway, because giving up had never once fixed anything either. There were nights he wanted to quit. On the 9th night, after the engine backfired and nearly caught fire, He sat on the cold concrete floor with his head in his hands, wondering if he had thrown away money his daughter needed for something as selfish and foolish as a dream. It was Lily who found him there, having snuck out of bed in her socks, and without saying a word she simply sat down beside him and rested her head against his shoulder, the way her mother used to when he was overwhelmed. She told him that broken things just needed someone patient enough to believe in them, and that she believed in him, and that was usually enough for anyone. He went back to work an hour later with tears he didn't let her see. On the 12th day, the engine finally turned over, sputtering, coughing, and then roaring to life in a way that made every neighbor on the street step outside to see what had happened. Daniel sat in the driver's seat with his hands shaking on the wheel, Lily bouncing in the passenger seat beside him, both of them laughing the kind of laugh that comes only after real struggle finally gives way to real relief. Word spread quickly in a small town, the way it always does, about the mechanic who brought a dead luxury car back from the grave in his own driveway using nothing but stubbornness and a soldering iron. A local news blogger wrote a short piece about it, calling it a story of quiet perseverance, and posted photos of Daniel polishing the restored silver paint with Lily asleep in a lawn chair beside him. That article was what caught the attention of Marcus Whitfield, a billionaire investor originally from that same county who had made his fortune in tech before most people there even had reliable internet. Whitfield had once owned that exact model of Aston Martin decades earlier, during the roughest chapter of his own life, before wealth, before recognition, when he was sleeping in his car some nights just trying to get his first company off the ground. That specific model of car represented, to him, the memory of every person who once believed in him before he had any right to be believed in. When he saw the photos of Daniel's restoration, something in him recognized not just a car, but a mirror of the exact desperate hope he remembered from his own younger years. 14 days after Daniel bought that dead car, a black helicopter landed in the empty field behind Pruitt's junkyard, drawing half the town outside to watch. Marcus Whitfield walked across the frost-covered grass in a coat that probably cost more than Daniel's entire garage, found Daniel standing beside his daughter and the restored Aston Martin, and simply stood there for a long moment staring at the car like he was seeing an old friend he never expected to meet again. He told Daniel the story of his own past, of the nights he almost gave up, of the version of himself that car represented, and then, without hesitation, he offered Daniel $10 million for it, not because the car itself was worth that much, but because what it represented to him, and what Daniel had done with it, was worth far more than money could measure. Daniel stood frozen, his daughter's small hand in his, unable to process a number that would erase every financial fear he had carried since his wife passed away. But he told Whitfield the truth before accepting anything, that the car wasn't just an investment or a flip, that it had become something between him and his daughter during the hardest years of their lives, a symbol that broken things could still be given a second chance if someone loved them enough to try. Whitfield, moved by that honesty more than by the car itself, didn't just buy the vehicle. He set up a trust fund for Lily's education, helped Daniel open his own independent garage in town, and told him that real wealth was never about the car in the driveway, but about the character of the man who dared to believe in something everyone else called dead. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that broken things and broken people can still be given a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today, because these stories only keep reaching people when we choose to pass them forward. Before we go, we have one small request. Please comment the words, second chances, below if you believe, like Daniel did, that it is never too late for something broken to become something beautiful. Daniel Reyes now owns a small but respected garage of his own, the kind of place where he still occasionally restores forgotten cars nobody else believes in, teaching Lily, now older, how to listen to an engine the same patient way he once taught himself. He still keeps a photograph on his garage wall of that silver Aston Martin the day it finally roared back to life, not as a reminder of the money it eventually brought him, but as a reminder that hope, however dented and rusted it may look, is always worth the work of bringing it back.